What is the best seam allowance for scrap quilts? If you have a pile of fabric scraps and are eager to turn them into a beautiful quilt, you might be wondering about the best seam allowance to use. The answer is quite simple and can make a big difference in your quilting experience. The best seam allowance for scrap quilts is generally a consistent 1/4 inch. This is the standard seam allowance used in most quilting patterns. It ensures that your fabric pieces fit together accurately when sewn. Using a 1/4 inch seam allowance helps maintain the correct size and shape of each patch. This is especially important when working with many irregular or varied fabric scraps. Consistency in this seam allowance is more important than exact precision. Small variations can occur due to fabric thickness, sewing machine differences, or cutting accuracy. For scrap quilts that will be washed and used frequently, sticking to a 1/4 inch seam allowance is recommended. This provides durability and stability. If your quilt is intended for decorative purposes, like a wall hanging that won't see much wear, you can use a smaller seam allowance like 1/8 inch. This can save fabric and reduce bulk. When recycling fabric scraps into quilts, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance allows you to piece together scraps efficiently. It also aligns well with common quilting rulers and cutting tools, making the process smoother. When sewing scraps together, pressing seams consistently is key. Usually, you should press toward the darker fabric or in one direction. This helps keep the quilt flat and manageable. Shorter stitch lengths are often used in scrap quilting, especially when foundation paper piecing is involved. This makes it easier to remove paper and creates strong seams despite the varied fabric types. To summarize, use a 1/4 inch seam allowance as the standard for scrap quilts. Maintain consistent seam allowance for proper fit and durability. For quilts that will be washed and used, a 1/4 inch is best. For decorative or lightly used quilts, a smaller seam allowance like 1/8 inch is possible. Press seams carefully to reduce bulk and maintain flatness. Use shorter stitch lengths when sewing scraps together for strength and ease of finishing. This approach supports the goals of recycle crafts by maximizing fabric use, reducing waste, and creating durable, attractive quilts from fabric scraps.